what an interesting day again. I got to tell you, day after day, you look at these Republicans, and I'm at a loss. And I had this weird conversation with a relative today, who, our family has lost someone to COVID. It's one of these things. He was a big Trump supporter. Was gleeful in the fact that he was a Trump supporter, and I'm listening to the responses from my relative, and I'm literally stunned at how crazy they've gotten. And I had someone today remind me of, you remember how like our parents' generation and the parents' generation of the kids just behind us were so afraid that video games were going to make their kids violent and they're going to make their kids crazy. When the sad reality is Fox News and right-wing talk radio has made the parents crazy. I mean, literally out of their mind crazy. I had an aunt today tell me that Joe Biden's going to be the end of the world. And you go, explain that. Well, because he's gonna leave, because he said that if Kamala Harris gives him grief, he's gonna retire. You go, what? Where did you find that gem? Which orifice did that come from? And I heard it. You can't tell me. And it's weird because you've got the you can't tell me religious crowd. There's just the crazy folks who are off the deep end. That crowd that I just find quite remarkable in that they're really, really off their rocker. And I came across this Michelle Bachmann video that just made me go. I used to laugh at Michelle Bachmann because she was crazy. She was really what crazy. But you really, at the end of it, thought that there was some bit of her that was still somewhat in the real world. Not so much. Here's crazy Michelle going off on a bizarre rant.
For this moment in the United States, we seriously, sincerely cry out to you, confessing our personal sins. We confess the sins of our country as proxies. We ask you, oh God, for deliverance, that our country may continue to know freedom. Lord, would you deliver these races in Georgia, oh Father? Would you deliver various local and state races, Father, that they aren't stolen? Would you give us a true vote? And oh God, I personally ask from myself, Michelle Bachmann, Lord, would you allow Donald Trump to have a second term as president of the United States? For this.
Yeah. Will you just let Donald Trump have a second term, please? So he can be president of the United States, please. Oh, please. Oh, please, Lord. And you listen to this and you go, look, I always knew she was crazy. I did. This is the kind of religiosity that scares me. The entitled religiosity, the kind that no one else matters. It's just me. And I love the part where, because this is her prayer. And, I don't quite remember this being part of the biblical teachings of what prayer is supposed to be. But, I guess there are a lot of people who pray for hockey teams and football teams and if they fail tests or not. But this is weird because, she's basically saying, hey, me, Michelle Bachmann, for me, you got to do this for me, because we're like this, we're buds. I mean, it's bizarre. But oddly enough, and this is one of those things that really, is most interesting to me, and is that this is who these people have been for a very long time. These folks have been off on the fringe and have worked their way into positions of power for a long time. And we've always known they were there. They were always the fringe. They were always you look at them at an arm's length. They've grown. They've organized. They've reproduced at alarming rates. And we've taken care of them. So today when Rush Limbaugh came out and basically, saying that, he's calling for sedition. He's calling for the next civil war. He's calling for the 17 states that have filed lawsuits against 4 other states, which is basically kind of the beginning of the next civil war, which, yesterday all day we talked about. People were shocked. How could Rush Limbaugh come out and say that, he's for secession? How could he say that? And I'm going, haven't you been paying attention? This is what these people have been talking about for decades. This isn't new. There's no new here. This is who they are. It's who they've always been. It's who they're going to be. And, because yesterday I joked a little bit, maybe we just let them go. Maybe that's the answer. And of course, you get back, they're good, decent people who live there too. And I agree with that. There's a lot of them. But crazy has multiplied in those places in really enormous ways. And it's because of people like Limbaugh. It's because of people like Hannity, and it's because of people like Glenn Beck. And you can go down the list of all of these talking heads and these political mouthpieces who have been out there for ratings the entire time. Because understand, Rush isn't talking about secession because it's good for the country. He's not talking about secession because it's a good idea. He's not talking about secession because he even believes it. He's talking about secession because it's good for ratings. And the thing is if Truth got the kind of ratings that propaganda and flame throwing and red meat get, I'd be bigger than Rush. Because the sad reality is the only honest thing that comes out of their mouth, honest thing that comes out of them is the thing that came out of Rudy at the meeting at the hearing in Michigan. The rest of it is, not. And, I tell this story often because in doing this gig, I've been pretty fortunate over the years. And I realized early on, because I started this as an activist. I started this as someone who's passionate about labor issues and about workers' rights and about, a prosperous working class and having someone at the bottom speaking truth to power. That's what what this has always been about. It's always been my passion. But in doing this, I've gotten enough attention that people go, oh, hey, he's not too bad at what he does. Bring him along. And I've gotten to go to a number of talk radio events. I've gone to a number of talk conventions over the years. And the thing that you realize really quickly is this is a business. For most of the vast majority of the people doing this, this is how they make their living. This is not how I make my living. This is what wakes me up in the morning. This is what keeps my head focused and my eyes forward. This is the passion. But for people like Limbaugh, whom I have never met, but people like Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, Alex Jones, Rusty Humphreys, you can go down the list, people I have met and have met a number of times, you realize really quickly when you talk to them that it's shtick. This is how they feed their families. This is how they feed their egos more than anything. And I go back to, I had a really lucid conversation with Alex Jones. And I know that's not possible. About a 20-minute conversation. Just we were waiting for his turn to go speak at the one convention, and we were off to the side. We're just going like two guys going back and forth. Because he didn't know who I was, and I kind of knew who he was, but barely, because he's off to the fringe. And the entire time, we're having this very lucid conversation. And I go, this guy doesn't seem like he's all that crazy. My original opinion of him was the guy's nuts. And we talked about sports. We talked about, politics, because we were there. It's a political thing. And he actually had some reasonable thoughts. The second he got behind the microphone on the stage, the second the light flashed on his face, he went from 0 to crazy in the blink of an eye. And while he was talking about, all of these way out concepts, all of the people in the audience didn't want to hear his political rant. They don't care about that. What they wanted to know more than anything else that he had to offer, was how he was making a living off the internet. They didn't want to hear his free speech nonsense. They didn't want to hear any of the reasons that he thought he was there. They wanted to figure out how he was making money. Because in that crowd, that's all that mattered. And as soon as you realize that talk radio, for the most part, especially the big boys, it's all about the ratings. It's all about the quarter hour ratings and all about the ad rates you can charge and how much money, how much coin is jingling in your pockets. It's all political theater, folks. It's all bread and circus. All designed to keep you tuned in and angry at every turn. And they do a great job of it. They do an amazing job of it. Virtually every word that comes out of their mouth is focus group tested, think tank approved. There's an entire industry of keeping you listening to the crazy. Not because they believe it, but because they need the ratings. And they bring themselves off as, we're patriots. No, you're capitalists. There's a difference. Patriots stand up and fight for their country. Capitalists stand up and fight for themselves. And this is where we're at in this very moment. You're seeing the people who are in it for themselves, the Michelle Bachmans of the world. 106 Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives who signed on to overturning the election. 106 congressional Republicans. That's more than half of their caucus. It's angering. It's frightening. Because we don't have statesmen left. What we have are people who are pure and simple, in it for themselves. This isn't even about ideology. You know, I know conservatives. I know good, decent, honest conservatives. And I respect them. And you can have a decent, reasonable conversation with them about policy, about moving forward. These aren't conservatives. Donald Trump is not a conservative in any stretch of the imagination. He's a fascist. That's what he is. And what we are seeing is the Republican Party that now is. So forget everything that was. This is not the party of Lincoln. It's not the party of Eisenhower. And it's certainly not the party of Ronald Reagan, although a lot of this craziness started under Reagan. The tearing apart of the working class of this country started under Reagan when he fired the Patco workers. The question becomes, and you see Mitt Romney on the fringes, saying it's madness what they're doing. Madness, I tell you. Okay, it's easy to snipe from the sidelines. What are you going to do about it? Where are the true statesmen to step forward? If Romney wanted to impress me, he would leave the Republican Party. Anyone who is still sane and rational, who has an R next to their name, should be leaving in droves. These are radicals. These are people who want to destroy the fabric of this nation and destroy the sanctity of the ballot box. All because their guy lost. And he did. When you lose by 7 million votes, you lost. And I don't know what fantasy island world you have to come from to think, okay, I only lost by 7 million. To me, that's a win. No, but Rick, it's the Electoral College. You're right, it is the Electoral College. 306 to 232. Again, I passed second grade math, like hopefully everybody at one point did. 306 is more than 232. No, but Rick, there was all this cheating. Okay, where is it? How come you didn't present it in front of a court of law? When you sent Rudy Giuliani around to do his little dog and pony show, why didn't you do that under oath? And when Ron Johnson goes and has a Senate hearing, will those people then be under oath? Will they have to put their hand on the Bible, the Michelle Bachmans of the world, swear that they believe in, and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God? Will they do that? under threat of perjury when they lie? Because if they do, I want to be there. I want them to be then held accountable when it turns out that they've lied. It's one thing to go out in the public square and yell and scream and carry on. It's a whole nother thing to sit in a court of law, to sit in a hearing under oath with the fear of going to jail for perjury and then telling your lies. This isn't about our election, because there have been a number of Republicans who have said there's nothing here. There have been more than 50 court cases that have said there's nothing here. And just because some people are still sore in the tuchus that their guy lost, and lost badly, 7 million votes, 7 million people more chose Joe Biden. And I had my aunt ask me, did you think he was going to win? I go, the popular vote without question. Did I think it was going to be 5, maybe 6 million? Yeah. Did I think 7? No. 7 is a big number. 7 million more people. Did I think it was going to be 306 to 232? No, I actually didn't. I thought it was going to be much closer. The fact that he lost Georgia, speaks volumes. And while I'm still dumbfounded that you have 17 Republican attorney generals from across this country willing to put their name on a piece of paper and say that we don't care about the votes of people in other states, is just incredible to me. And it should anger each and every one of us. Look, I can go back to 2016 and be very angry about the results of 2016. Were there a lot of irregularities back then? Yeah. Was it a conspiracy? Sure. The Republican Party moved on voter suppression for decades. They've been doing all kinds of things to keep people from the polls. But did the Democrats say we're going to tear down the Republic? Scary times, my friend. Quick break. Right back.
Union gives a voice to win on the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1915. That was the day the 1,000,000th Model T rolled off the Ford assembly line in Highland Park, Michigan, near Detroit. Henry Ford started Model T production 7 years earlier. For nearly 20 years, the Tin Lizzie served as the first affordable vehicle, opening up travel and leisure to a new middle class. Ford refashioned the packing house conveyor to develop the assembly line. Before production moved to the sprawling modern River Rouge complex, the Highland Park plant was considered the factory that changed the world. Ford's ambition to produce cars for the multitudes extended to his workers. As part of his campaign to beat back organizing drives by the industrial workers of the world, Ford instituted the $5 day at the Highland Park plant. For auto workers, buying a Model T, even with the $5 day, was not so easy. The $5 day actually amounted to $2.34 in wages and an additional $2.66 a day in profit sharing if Ford determined the worker was actually living right. Investigators from his sociological department visited workers in their homes. The routine intrusions into the personal lives of workers away from the job included determining spending and cleanliness habits, whether they drank or smoked, whether they were married or single, the state of the workers' marital relations, and family values. Workers who failed these home inspections were given 6 months to shape up or be fired. Ford ruled young single men, women, and blacks completely ineligible from the wage program. For a time, employee turnover plummeted and production increased. But wartime inflation and deteriorating working conditions all but killed the $5 day, which ended in 1921.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Look, got to tell you, I love that our Attorney General here in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, who we've had on the program a number of times over the years. I love their court filing response. A cacophony of bogus claims and seditious abuse of judicial power. He writes in the brief, Texas seeks to invalidate elections in 4 states for yielding results with which it disagrees. It's required for this court to exercise its original jurisdiction and then anoint Texas's preferred candidate for president is legally indefensible and is an affront to the principles of constitutional democracy. He says that the lawsuit rested on a surreal alternative reality. And that's really what it is. They live in a whole different alternative reality. And here to talk a little bit about, well, the whole push to, the Limbaugh push for secession. And as I said, this is what they've always wanted. This is their moment. I've asked our good friend Brett Pransky to talk with us. Brett is a former Ohio State representative candidate, also one of my favorite English professors in the world. Brett, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, I've got this theory, and this has been my thought on this from the beginning. The Limbaughs of the world, the Hannitys, the rest of them, they in no way, shape, or form believe what they're spewing. This is just good for the ratings. It's good for the quarterlies. It's good to get the ad rates up, and it gets the faithful all tingly in the panties and all juiced up. I can't believe that they buy this stuff.
No, I really can't either. I mean, I'm sure to some degree they probably believe small bits and pieces of it, but the whole thing is pretty amped up in kind of ridiculous ways. And it's kind of like grievance radio, which is just all day, your grievances and what makes you angry and so on, just over and over and over and over again. You notice that the subjects on the show are never, not for 5 seconds, good news about anything or anyone. They're never celebrating anything, and they're just moving from grievance to grievance to grievance to grievance.
Well, isn't it
long? That has to be intentional.
Oh, it's absolutely intentional. It's the 2 minutes hate for 3 hours.
Right. Yeah, and for some reason we seem to tune into it. Now, this really shouldn't surprise us at this point. We have basically a reality show personality, in the White House, at least for another few weeks. So there's something about, I don't know if it's kind of we've all heard the old adage that everyone slows down at a car accident. Everyone looks at a train wreck and so on. We just can't help ourselves.
Right.
It's kind of like that becoming an industry, and we seem to have fallen for it. I never thought it would become quite this large.
Now, a lot of people are saying, well, they've got to do something to distract us from how horrible COVID is, and it's bad. We're losing more than 3,000 people a day. Their response has been horrible. This is that distraction. But there's a bigger part of this for me, is that this is what they've been dreaming about, the second Civil War, for a very long time. And I've had numerous conversations with people, especially in my area, who, they truly believe the second Civil War is coming and they're going to do all the right things this time. And I got to be honest, there's part of me that goes, let them go. Let those 17 states go, and the rest of us can move forward without him. Because look, they're dead weight.
Well, in some cases, you're absolutely right. While I wouldn't advocate for this sort of thing, I did some growing up in the Deep South, and, I've always had a love for the place. And, so sometimes in order to be a good friend, you have to speak hard truths. All right. And it's time for some of these folks. It's time for some hard truths. It's time to speak hard truths to our friends. All right. So while it's hard to put a geographical location on this whole secession argument, because they didn't get specific about who should go or how many states should go or which states should go, which states should stay. And even in the states that would stay, you've still got, blue states are typically about 60-40 blue, and red states are usually about 60-40 red, which leaves a 40% chunk in both areas. And you can't secede by county, you can't secede by neighborhood. So, kind of who would go and who would stay would be would be kind of, but you assume it would be certain areas, including like the Sun Belt would lead the charge. You know, the Mississippis, the Alabamas, the Louisianas, these would be the states that you would think would be the most, ardent proponents of this kind of plan. Well, these states are the states that are most dependent on federal dollars. They're the states that are most dependent on those blue states with the booming economies in order to survive. I mean, most of these states take Alabama, for instance. I don't want to pick on the state in particular because it's true all throughout the Deep South. But a state like Alabama takes in about $4 for every dollar it pays in federal taxes. So whereas, here in Ohio, where I live, we get back about 75 cents for every dollar we pay into the system. Okay. So some states are net givers and some states are net takers. The biggest net takers are the same states that we assume would lead the secession movement. So if that's the case, and they actually accomplished what it was they say they want, in about 6 months, they wouldn't be able to feed themselves. So I don't think there's any part of this that is even slightly based in reality. It could never happen.
Well, it could never happen, but it's good for ratings, and it gets good people all riled up going, we're going to have our own country where crazy can rule and Donald Trump can still be president.
Right, which is exactly why it's being said. It's not a thing that can even approach reality, but it's great for ratings. So you hear it, and people jump on board and they cheer and so on. But it's another one of those things where if you actually gave them the opportunity, they wouldn't take it. No. I remember when I was a kid, I got mad at my father once. I told him I wanted to run away. He took out a small suitcase, packed a few shirts, a few pairs of pants, a couple pairs of underwear, closed it, handed it to me, put me on the front porch, closed the door. Half hour later, I was screaming and banging on that door, just begging to come back in. I had learned my lesson. Now, I'm not suggesting that we do this, but that would certainly be the response, just a little bit differently than mine would have been as a child.
Right. Now, there are some who are arguing that maybe we pursue federal law to say you can't get more than $1.50 back on the dollar that you give in, kind of limiting what these southern states have been draining out of Washington while screaming about Washington. I mean, this is the weird thing that gets me, Brett. We're funding the people, and I guess it's because we're the stupid ones. We're funding the people who want to destroy this country. We are propping up the people who want to tear us down.
Yeah, essentially, we pay them to hate us, and that's it's perhaps a little generalized, but it's not inaccurate. We pay them to hate us, and and they take our money and then hate us for it. So and it's unfortunate that it's come to that. But then again, if we're going to talk about these things and we're going to prop them up and we're going to put them out there as if they could potentially be real, then okay, let's talk about real things. And real things include the hard truths that we've been talking about, for the last several minutes. If you really want to have this discussion, we can have it, but you're not going to like how it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm still stuck in this moment because I earlier today I got off the phone with a relative who is literally lost her mind. I'm struggling with that conversation because we've had another relative who's passed of COVID, and big Trump supporter, as most of them are, and they don't seem to blame Trump's response at all, or lack thereof, or failure at any point. They don't see it. It's they bought into that it was a hoax and it wasn't going to affect anything. But now that it's affected the family, now it's he's done the best he can. It's right. The kind of forgiveness that they have for Donald Trump and the hatred they have of the others is frightening. And to do it in the name of religion, like the clip with Michelle Bachmann I played, is really just crazy to me.
Yeah, it's really kind of stunning the cult of personality that's developed, around the current president. I've really never seen anything quite like it. And I know that through the years, from 2016, you'll see people, especially people on the edge of the discussion, make Hitler references and things like that. And that's always been the third rail in any sane discussion of American politics. It was always, well, whoever names the Nazis first loses, and that's pretty accurate in most cases. But in terms of just the cult of personality itself, because the one thing that I keep going back to is during those times when Hitler rose, he rose in one of the most advanced countries in the world. These weren't a bunch of rubes that he talked into doing all these horrible things. This was it was an extremely advanced culture, as we are today. And the fact that so many of us can buy into something this loony is really, I think it has historical parallels. Even though that particular parallel is one you're not supposed to draw, it really does seem to fit in some places.
Yeah, but for me, it comes back down to our media structure. It comes back down to talk radio has been completely dominated by right-wing voices for a very long time. And as I said in my opening, people who I with all of my heart and soul believe they don't believe the nonsense that they're spewing. It's just good for ratings and it's handed to them. If people knew the infrastructure that was in place to do the messaging that comes out of the radio on the right wing, they would be shocked. Every day there are different think tanks and different organizations that literally provide scripts, literally provide whatever guests you want, whatever scenarios are available. They program these shows from the think tanks and these focus groups, and that's what they do masterfully, and they disseminate it from Rush all the way down to the baby Rushes in every community. Right. And they're masterful at it. And the left isn't.
It really comes down to a very simple understanding of persuasion, or in this case, deception. There are two emotions that you can tap that bypass reason, and those are fear and anger. If you can ever think about a time you've been truly afraid, or you can ever think about a time where you've been truly angry, you notice you don't think straight. So if you can make people angry, if you can make people afraid, you can push them in pretty much whatever direction you want them to go.
Right. And if you can do both.
You give me someone who's scared or someone who's angry, and I'll give you back a Jehovah's Witness or a jihadist, whatever you want. All right. That's what message makers do. And that's what they're carrying. So that's what when we talk about being, grievance radio, that's the purpose for it, because angry people don't think. And scared people don't think. They just act and react. And most times, if you can give them a little bit of direction, they'll go the rest of the way. And that's why it's been such a big part of our political discourse for all of my life.
Yeah. And, it's scary. I mean, they were told, the people who were scared and angry, they were the ones who were angry that they were struggling to make ends meet to begin with. The economy shuts down and we didn't get them money to help them make it through. So they're afraid they're going to lose their businesses, their homes. And I understand that. I wholeheartedly get that. And then they're told, well, it's the Democrats doing this to you. It's them. It's not how badly we boogered this up. It's them. And, look, my family fell for it. And when it hits home, they're still not buying, and that's right. The scary part for me. And I look at your state of Ohio, where much like where I'm at here in Pennsylvania, we've got elected leaders who have never taken it seriously. We had our little Rudy Giuliani political theater the day before Thanksgiving, and the guy who headed it up, Senator Doug Mastriano, that night was tested for COVID. And you go, how many other of those people have gotten it and didn't bother to tell anybody? And how much have they spread it? And I now hear your state legislature full of it.
Yeah, and honestly, there was a state rep, an exiting state rep. He didn't run for re-election, so he just gave his farewell speech the other day. But he tested positive twice, and still went to work. And was in committee meetings with other members and staffers and so on. And now we have at least 9 other legislators in the House who have tested positive since that time. And and before his quarantine time was passed, before he would have been cleared to come back, he was back without a mask. So I mean, it's just, and keep in mind, this entire time that he tested positive, he told his leadership, who never told the Democratic side of the House. They just didn't bother telling him.
No.
Now these things are practically criminal in terms of the amount of danger that you're causing to other people, and needless danger that you're causing to other people. It's just nonsensical, but and it's done out of some weird sense of loyalty that I just don't quite understand.
No, and the thing that gets me is because we had the same thing here in Pennsylvania. We had Republican representatives who were testing positive and not telling anyone and showing up to these things and potentially putting not just the Democrats at risk, but also the Republicans and their staffers at risk. And it's one of those things where if they don't care about themselves, do you really think they care about anyone else? It's the same thing with the people who are screaming for secession. What do they really mean by that? Do they mean that they're going to pick out a neighbor they don't like and, pick them off in the middle of the street? Does this mean they really want to start the next civil war that could rip families apart and have, people shooting across the driveway?
Yeah. And that's, again, we talk about hard truths and how we tell our friends hard truths. Well, that's another one that we need to, because the people who are thinking, yeah, we should do this or we should do that, or, we should secede, or, I welcome the next civil war. You're basically saying that you want to shoot people in your neighborhood. You know what I mean? And I can't get past that. The potential consequences are so enormous that the fact that people are willing to talk about it so haphazardly, it stuns me. At the end of the day, we're supposed to all be Americans, and we're not acting like it at the moment.
No, and the thing that gets me, Brett, is we're in this moment where it's going to get worse before it gets any better, because I don't see Trump going away anytime soon. I see the virus getting worse, so we're kind of hitting to this peak point, peak anger, peak fear, and I'm worried for the future of our country.
Yeah, as am I. And again, some of the blame for this, at least some, has to go on the new incoming administration as well. I believe that the people coming together is the right message, and that, telling us that we have to heal as a nation, we have to come together, that is the right thing to do. But we do have to recognize the current state we're in. I mean, right now we have a number of people who are on paper declaring themselves anti-American. That's what those 109 legislators in the House of Representatives did today. They basically declared war on America, trying to overturn an American election. And so what it's kind of become is, while coming together is great, at the end of the day, it's like talking about American politics with a Frenchman. We can argue all the live long day and you can have your opinions, but at the end of the day, only one of us is really an American. So only one of us really, really matters in the conversation. And I don't want it to be like that anymore. But I need my friends on the other side of the aisle to get a little closer to sanity so we can work this stuff out. There
you go. Most certainly. Brett, I appreciate the time, the thoughts. Good stuff, man.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, our good friend Brett Pransky. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1855. That was the day that Haymarket martyr August Spies was born. He immigrated to America from Germany in 1872 and became involved in the Chicago labor movement while working as an upholsterer. The Panic of 1873 and the Great Strikes of 1877 radicalized Spies. He soon joined the Socialist Labor Party, but left over the issue of electoral politics. He and others favored revolutionary action instead, and threw their weight to the emerging anarcho-syndicalist movement. Spies and his comrade, Albert Parson, believed trade unions must work towards ending capitalism rather than simply fighting for economic gains. They soon became leaders of the International Working People's Association in Chicago. Spies became the editor of the radical German-language newspaper, Arbeiter Zeitung. The workers' newspaper decried the incredible wealth of a few amidst the immense poverty and suffering workers faced. It became a rallying point for the 8-hour day campaign. Spies and other anarchist leaders, who would soon be known as the Haymarket Martyrs, became involved in organizing the May Day strike in 1886. Spies gave the impassioned speech at the McCormick Reaper Works. He witnessed the Chicago police shoot down 2 workers as they confronted scabs at the gate and organized a protest rally in response. The rally took place at the Haymarket Square the next evening. When the fateful bomb was thrown, Spies and his comrades were immediately arrested. They were tried and convicted for their political views. There was no evidence linking any of them to any crime. As he walked to the gallows, Spies shouted, "The day will come when our silence will be more powerful than the voices you are throttling today."
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some Labor Department news out today. 853,000 Americans filed first-time jobless claims. That is more than the 730 that they were expecting. You're looking at a massive number, almost nearly 1 million people. And this has been going on week after week. And yet we have a Congress. Well, I shouldn't say that. We have a Republican Senate Majority Leader who absolutely, without question, will do nothing. According to the Washington Post, we got more than 20 million people who are on some form of unemployment insurance. And Merry Christmas, the day after, many of those people fall off. We've got massive numbers of people who are food insecure. In fact, the Washington Post just did a story about the rising number of people who are stealing food just to survive. It's crazy. And look, McConnell will allow nothing to come through unless we give up the pound of flesh, which is the massive immunity shield for employers, because heaven forbid we hold them accountable for unsafe workplaces. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the economy and what needs to happen, I've asked Mark Paul to come talk with us. He's an assistant professor of economics at the New College of Florida. Mark, thanks for taking time for us.
Great to be with you tonight, Rick. I wish we were talking under better circumstances, but unfortunately, that's just not where we are today.
No,
right.
We're in a crazy place. I mean, the fact that we can't get a survival package. They keep saying we need to send out stimulus checks. No, we're not. We're not going to stimulate anything. People need money to survive.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I think about it is, look, right now the economy is essentially bleeding out. What we need is a tourniquet for this moment, right? We need an economic relief package just to help people keep a roof over their head during the holidays, to keep food on the table. We're seeing right now food insecurity in supposedly the richest country in the world just absolutely skyrocket. A report just came out of Rhode Island where 1 in 4 families in Rhode Island right now are struggling to keep food on the table. Food banks across the country are seeing absolute skyrocket in the demand that they've never seen before. I mean, really, it's harkening back to the bread lines that we see in old posters from the Great Depression nearly a century ago. It's really some troubling times. And the most infuriating part of all of it is that this is just completely preventable. It's not like we have a food shortage here in the United States. It's not like we have a shortage of houses here in the United States. We have a shortage of political will from our leaders that we've sent to Washington.
No, and it's sadly, it's that simple. And I don't know what it's going to take, because literally one man is holding all of this up, and that's Mitch McConnell. He's been the guy who's been the roadblock to every bit of progress the last several years, and somehow he still won re-election in the state of Kentucky.
Yeah, it's deeply frustrating. I mean, let's not forget that people like Mitch McConnell are completely insulated from these crises. I mean, this is one of the wealthiest senators to have ever walked the halls of Washington. And this man, unfortunately, seems pretty hell-bent on increasing the pain and suffering of low-income and middle-income Americans who have lost their jobs and are struggling during this pandemic through absolutely no fault of their own. I mean, just today with the jobless report that you talked about, I mean, unfortunately, it's even worse than you said. 1.3 million people actually filed for unemployment if we actually look at folks that applied under a government program that's about to expire that we call the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, which is essentially additional unemployment benefits for gig workers that don't traditionally qualify. These are really, really vital workers to our economy, but they're also our neighbors, our friends, our loved ones that are, losing their jobs due to the current downturn. And it's really unprecedented times. I mean, 38 weeks straight, we are seeing jobless claims that are worse than anything we saw during the Great Recession. 38 weeks straight.
I mean, that is just, and again, it's I look at this and I say, I've been saying all summer long, this lull time that they had over the summer from, the end of really the first wave until this moment, they could have done so much. In fact, the Democratic-led House passed the HEROES Act back in May, $3.2 trillion in money to help small businesses, to help local communities, to help state governments, to ensure that there's a floor beneath people's feet for when this second wave comes around. And it is here. We are in the middle of a horrible, raging second wave. And it could have been dealt with all summer long. And to my Trump supporters, this could have gotten Donald Trump reelected. So if you want to really be ticked at someone, don't be ticked at the secretaries of state and the voting officials all across the country. Be mad at Mitch McConnell because he held up the one thing that I think Trump would have sailed into office with, which was a massive, massive stimulus bill that would have kept people employed and not worrying so much about losing their businesses and their savings.
That's right. And, look, we've learned that the pandemic doesn't care if you're a red voter or a blue voter. We know that, whether or not your company lays you off or your small restaurant goes out of business has nothing to do with which party you voted for. Right now, everybody across the political spectrum is suffering, yet the Republicans are just completely going down the obstructionist pathway for absolutely no reason.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, in the coming weeks, a whole slew of programs are set to expire. The eviction moratorium is one example. 40 million Americans are facing eviction right now. You know what the number one leading cause of homelessness is? People always point to their, potential drug issues or alcoholism and things like this. It's eviction. Eviction is the number one reason for homelessness, and 40 million Americans are facing it, something that's completely preventable. Over 12 million Americans are looking at their unemployment benefits about to expire during the holidays. What are they supposed to do? How are they supposed to come up with any money?
Yeah.
Let's keep in mind that most Americans have essentially no money left in savings due to this crisis. So there just is no safety net, and McConnell is just refusing to be reasonable. I mean, the Democrats have in the House passed a package, as you talked about, back in May. I mean, that's 6 months ago now. What has Mr. Kentucky been doing? He's been doing nothing.
And the thing that gets me, Mark, is that Kentucky's one of those states, one of the poorer states in the country, that I got to assume that the majority of the people in the state don't have that safety net. When you look at a country where 60% of us can't come up with $1,000 during an emergency and 40% of us can't come up with $400. That leaves a lot of people on the margin and a lot of people vulnerable to falling behind on their rent and eventually being evicted and out in the street. And oh, by the way, the day after Christmas.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. I mean, you wish that we could have sent somebody to Congress to represent the actual people of Kentucky, as you said, many of which are really struggling in normal times, let alone in crisis times like we're facing here today. The frustrating thing is, policymakers know exactly what's needed.
Right.
It's pretty straightforward. We need to inject trillions of dollars in stimulus into the economy. McConnell introduced something called a skinny repeal that would essentially leave the unemployment rate in this country in the double-digit range. I mean, it's just completely unacceptable. Right now, both the White House and bipartisan group in the Senate has agreed on roughly a $1 trillion stimulus package, which is woefully insufficient for the crisis we're dealing with right now. Yet it's being held up by McConnell. I mean, he is really the most dangerous man in America.
No, it's crazy. And this is one of these moments where I hope people are paying attention to all of what has been conservative economic ideology is failing us at every turn. I hope we've learned that the tax cuts for the wealthy don't create jobs. It just makes richer rich people. I hope we're figuring out that that starving government and not having government invest in things is a really bad idea because it harms jobs. And I hope people are finally waking up to the reality that during times of crisis, you need an active government who's going to steal a John Maynard Keynes quote, prime the pump to keep the wheels rolling.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. And it's nothing new here. We've known how to deal with crises like this for nearly a century, and yet people the Republicans in Washington are just sitting on their hands. The most frustrating part is not because they actually think saving the economy means inaction. They simply don't want to give money to low and middle income people. They love inequality. They feed off this stuff. I mean, it's really narcissistic stuff. It's really gross. So there's just no way that we can plead ignorance anymore. You know, these ideas have failed. They know the other ideas are out there. They know they work. And they're just simply choosing to ignore it. I mean, the craziest thing is if you actually claim to be a fiscal conservative, if you actually care genuinely about the long-term budgetary outlook of the United States government, what's the number one thing you do right now? You spend trillions of dollars. Why? Because if you pull back on spending, as the government's currently doing, you're going to send us into a double-dip recession or worse. People, you know, we already see workers starting to leave the labor force. You know, you might have seen it the other day. The unemployment rate came out and it ticked down. Why did it tick down? Because people are leaving the labor force, not because the economy is getting healthier.
No, it's not that they're leaving the workforce. It's that there's nothing there for them. It's not that they really have a choice. It's that, you know, there's nothing out there and they've given up hope.
Exactly. I mean, it's not safe to look for a job right now when we have hundreds of thousands in, 3,000 deaths a day, hundreds of thousands of cases. It's not safe to be out there looking for work. And then there's just not the jobs because people don't have money to spend. How do we create jobs? The rich don't create jobs. You and I create jobs. Other people create jobs. Working class people create jobs by going out and buying dinner, by buying groceries, by paying rent, by just doing that basic everyday things. In economics, we call it aggregate demand, and that's why we need to send people checks and increase unemployment insurance so people can go out and buy necessities and help create more jobs and keep the economy, moving in a better direction than it has been for months now.
I said back when they were shutting everything down. Back during the spring, that they should pay everybody 90% of their wages to stay home, so that they make sure that they don't lose anything and that people stay home and we crush this virus. We should have built a system that did that had put that in place for right now, so we can get people to stay home and so they can keep paying their bills and they can keep having resources to get the things that they need to keep everything going. But yet, as you've said, the Republicans don't seem to want that. They want a desperate society. They want poverty, working conditions. And, I just look at somebody like Lindsey Graham, who was apoplectic over the fact that people on unemployment were getting the extra $600 with their unemployment that actually got them to the point to where they were making about 90% of their wages. That's the part that gets me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, right now, if we had been in a sane society, I mean, it's a fun game I like to play with my students. What would a reasonable person on the left and a reasonable person on the right actually be negotiating right now if they were interested in saving the economy? And then we could talk about what different forms of stimulus actually look like, right? Maybe conservatives want to send people checks. Staunch conservatives aren't a huge fan of government programs, but they're a fan of things like basic incomes and things along these lines. I mean, that's an idea from Milton Friedman, for Christ's sake. Versus, Democrats might be interested in financing state and local budgets, financing education, doing things like more medium and long-term investments. When you think about a lot of these big infrastructure projects, for instance, those take months and if not years to plan. A lot of those jobs could be done from home right now safely. Democrats might take that approach. But those aren't the reasonable, principled conversations we're having. And that's the most frustrating part. So, what a co-author and I just did the other day is we sat down and asked a really simple question. Let's strip away the political jargon and just ask, how much stimulus does the economy actually need to bring us back to full employment? In other words, to put everybody back to work. That's kind of the question you wish Congress was asking right now, right? Right? And what did we find? Is it that $1 trillion that they're talking about? Is it that $500 billion that Mitch Mcconnell's talking about? Not even close. What we find is that if Congress wants to put America actually back to work, we need to be looking at $3 to $4.5 trillion in stimulus to resuscitate the economy. We're not even in the right ballpark right now with the current negotiations going on in D.C. It's really horrendous.
No, it's horrendous. So the question then becomes, because I truly don't expect much from now until January 20th. What does Joe Biden do? What's the first action that he has to do, do you think?
So Joe Biden's going to be in a tough spot. I mean, unfortunately, he doesn't have the Congress. So, his ability to be able to pass meaningful stimulus measures is really going to be able to be held up by McConnell unless Democrats somehow sweep those 2 seats in Georgia, which is a pretty pretty steep climb, unfortunately. But we'll see how those play out. But there's a lot of things that Biden can do. I mean, an easy thing is just a one-time write-off of student debt. Biden, with the stroke of a pen, could eliminate student debt. We're talking about the government raking in $70 billion a year by profiting off normal people trying to get an education, trying to be active members of their society, and trying to live that American dream. The government's making money hand over fist off of them. The government lends to a bank at 0.25% in interest. What does the government lend to people on student loans? Shoot, I have friends that have student loans that are paying 7 or 8% to the government per year. We're talking about 20 times, 25 times higher than the interest rate that the government charges banks is what they're charging our students.
Right.
Biden can wipe that out with the stroke of a pen. He doesn't need Congress to do it. I think that's a great place for him to start. But he really does need to see if he can, work. Unfortunately, it's the situation we're in with some of the more moderate Republicans to push additional stimulus, whether or not we get this, roughly $1 trillion package before the end of the year. I think I was much more optimistic last weekend. Right now, things are looking pretty rocky.
Yeah, it's the last question I've got for you. You've laid this out. It looks pretty rocky. If you're a betting man, what are the odds of getting something by the time the end of the year, or by the day after Christmas when a lot of the bad stuff happens? What are the chances?
I think we're going to get something, and I think it's going to be, roughly a quarter to a fifth of what the economy and the American people actually need. So we're going to get a small Band-Aid on a gaping wound. And it's going to be a giant lump of coal for the American people this holiday season.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, and they're gonna still scream about the war on Christmas. Crazy stuff. Mark, I appreciate the time. Look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Thanks, Rick. Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays to you as well. Mark Paul, assistant professor of economics there at the New College of Florida. You can check out his website, markpaulecon.com. We'll get links out on how you can check a look at that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1906. That was the day that workers at the General Electric plant in Schenectady, New York, organized a sit-down strike. It is considered to be perhaps the first time the sit-down tactic was used in the United States. The workers were affiliated with the Industrial Workers of the World, or Wobblies. In a sit-down strike, the workers take possession of their workplace. They literally sit down on the job and refuse to leave. This prevents their employer from replacing them with strike-breaking scabs. This first sit-down strike was organized by the workers to protest the dismissal of 3 of their fellow workers and IWW members. The local newspaper, the Schenectady Union, reported, "The action of the strikers has crippled the works." Family members and supporters of the workers passed food through the windows to the men inside the plant. After 10 days, the IWW members decided to return to work. In the years that followed the action in Schenectady, the sit-down strike was not used much, but then it became a key tactic in the 1930s U.S. labor movement. It was successfully used by the Congress of Industrial Organizations. The most well-known use of the sit-down strike was the Flint, Michigan sit-down strike of 1936-1937. Workers occupied the plants of General Motors for more than 40 days, and in the end, won union recognition. The CIO had a song about sitting down for your rights.
Sit down, you keep your seat. Sit down and rest your feet. Sit down, you gotta be. Sit down, sit down.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Years ago, Robert Kennedy noted that making economic, political, and social progress is hard, for such advances require rejecting policies that sustain the establishment's profits and power. Progress is nice, he said, but its agent is change, and change has its enemies. His recognition that gutsy, honest leadership is necessary to confront the wealthy interests and advance the common good is directly applicable to one of the most important cabinet appointees President-elect Joe Biden will make, Secretary of Agriculture. The media and all recent presidents have dismissed ag as a second-tier slot that essentially belongs to the giants of industrial agribusiness. This has enriched faraway corporate executives and absentee owners, but it's been disastrous for farm families, small-town residents, and rural vitality. While the national media and their own government look the other way, a broad multiracial diversity of millions of middle and low-income rural families face economic and social devastation. Not only are farmers being crushed by profiteering monopolies at all levels of ag, but the larger rural community is also being run over by massive polluters and pipeliners, low-wage factories, predatory retail chains, and other corporate extractors of rural wealth. The result is a countryside beset by a surge of farm foreclosures, joblessness, Main Street bankruptcies, creeping poverty, loss of health care services, weather calamities due to climate change, lack of broadband, outmigration of youth, COVID-19, suicides, and a host of other plagues. This is Jim Hightower saying it's time for change, and the place to begin is with the Secretary of Agriculture. The need here is so deep, widespread, and overdue that we the people must assert our grassroots voice. To learn more, go to ourrev.us/agsec.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So breathlessly, I see the story that there's a leaked recording. Yes, it's been leaked. Joe Biden evidently said in the dark of night that the defund the police movement contributed to the Democrats not winning down ballot. And you go, yeah, okay, I get that. Evidently, Joe Biden said in a secret recording, that's how they beat the living hell out of us across the country, saying that we're talking about defunding the police. We're not. We're talking about holding them accountable. Evidently, he had this meeting with civil rights leaders and people, and somehow this was a big secret. And they've leaked it. No, this is what Joe Biden's been saying all freaking long. There's nothing to see here. But I love the right-wing groups who think, oh, we got something. Oh boy, got something. We got him. No, you don't got him. I've been saying that from the beginning. Jeez, oh man. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. My favorite reporter in the entire world. The great reporter from Raw Story, our good friend Sarah Burris. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you. That is so sweet.
You are my favorite reporter by far, without question. Undoubtedly so leaked. This leaked bombshell. The defund the police thing hurt Democrats.
Dozens of people in this meeting, and somehow it's leaked. And the scandalous thing that Joe Biden said that Barack Obama had said just days before. Right.
that I said before the day they said it, months ago. Yeah. I said, this is not good. This is what the Limbaughs of the world, the crazies of the world are going to say. See, they're radical. And I said, no, I'm not for defunding the police. I support our police when they're not wrong. I think that's simple.
It is. And I feel like this is one of those difficult issues because there's more nuance to this, and Republicans don't do nuance. They do sound bites and two-word phrases. And when you talk about defunding the police, it's about funding other security programs. It's about bringing in social workers and having people who are actually trained to deal with mental health, people having mental health crises, so that they can be the ones to sort of talk people down rather than having cops come in and shoot people because they don't know what to do. And so there's a lot going on to the issue, but it's something that's been happening for decades. And I feel like people of color that explain it to me basically say, y'all weren't listening to us whenever we were talking about this issue. Now at least you are. The problem is that then, even if we're talking about it, it's not moving the issue. There aren't going to be any real changes if the whole, Republican Party decides that the alternatives are defund the police or, not. And so,
no, and this is where the left has failed. This is where the left has failed to do what the right is masterful at. The right doesn't get behind these slogans. They don't use these words unless they've got their think tanks, thinking them up, and then focus group approving them. They're masters. Frank Luntz didn't put his name on defund the police because it was a bad idea.
Right. We suck at this. We are terrible at this.
Yeah, you think?
I would much prefer that we have. I mean, here's the thing. If that is a liberal solution, Biden's solution is actual accountability, then he looks like the guy in the middle. And if that's what it takes to get something actually accomplished on police accountability, then I'm cool with that. I just would love to have some action around it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. But I couldn't get over how it was this breaking, leaking story. I'm going, huh? Did I miss something?
There's people in this meeting, and it's a secret.
And I think they actually, there were some groups that put, never mind. It's crazy. But here again, this is one of those weird moments that we're in as a country, like having 17 states decide that they know better than the 4 states that they want to sue to overturn their other 4 states' elections, which I got to tell you, I got to give them credit. Good on them for thinking that they've got the right to do that.
But I mean, really, that is so Texas, right? Like, that is so totally Texas. They, honest to God, think that that the world revolves around them. It is the People's Republic of Texas, and that is the earth, and everybody else doesn't really matter. And so they should be able to dictate everything, whether it's the Big 12 or the Big 10 now, or the way everybody voted. I think it's funny. The big part of this is that it's paving the way for California to come in and be like, all y'all suck. Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Kansas, Missouri, your votes are inappropriate. Therefore, you need to go. So,
well, there is a secession movement in California. Wasn't it a Russian op, though? I mean, I remember that, where they were trying to get California to secede, and we find out that it's a Russian op.
Texas has been trying to secede for like 100 years now, every once in a while. And there's still like a pretty rabid movement of Texas people. I would be fine selling them back to Mexico.
I would love, I'd be happy just to, there's part of me, all right, go ahead. But here's what you get back, and this is what I got immediately, because I said yesterday, in kind of a flippant manner, that, if they want to go, at some point, they're causing so much hassle and headache, and they cost us a ton of money, because none of those states that are suing us actually put more money into the federal government than they take out. So they're a drain on the rest of us. Let them go.
Well, the thing is, it's not just a solid red state.
Yeah, I know. That's what what about the blue dots, and what about them? You know what?
Are we just going to relocate every Democrat from the state of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, and stick them in Michigan? I mean, I'm cool with that. I like Michigan. It's a great town. Talk to me about Detroit pizza, right? Like, hello. So I'm fine with that, but you're going to have to teach a whole lot of people how to shovel snow. Yeah. And
you got to point.
So that's
but there's part of me, though, if you take this to its next level, you go, can we just divide up teams again? We'll go shirts and skins if we have to. Can we just divide this up and then if that's how this has to be?
Whatever.
Not going there, are you?
Well, I mean, part of me keeps thinking about this in terms of the Big Ten, and really, it's all about basketball for me. Like that's what it comes down to whenever I talk about red states and blue states. Is which state really has the best basketball team?
Okay.
So.
And which state does?
Not really. Kansas. Duh.
No.
I am a Jayhawk. Have we met?
All right.
And the thing that's crazy is because I'm from Oklahoma and I'm a Jayhawk, like I have serious issues with Texas. And a lot of people assume that is because I have this anti-Southern sentiment. And it's like, no, man, this is about football and basketball. Do you people not know? This is a thing.
So if that's the case, if you being the big football and basketball advocate and having this divide, how the hell did Tommy Tuberville win in Alabama as the coach of Auburn?
Dude.
How does that happen? How do the people sell their soul against the University of Alabama to vote for Tommy Tuberville?
I have a Bama friend that I need to ask about that because I do not understand. I mean, the only thing I thought is that maybe this is just a straight ticket Democrat versus Republican issue. But that just seems maybe if Doug Jones was more active in Bama ball, then that would have been a lot different. But man,
or maybe there really are aliens.
Dude, there are totally some aliens apparently, and they're in an underground base in Mars or something.
Mars.
Yes, that's what if you saw earlier this week, an Israeli scientist who was the head of the science, the whatever they have, that's the NASA equivalent in Israel. The dude was there for like 4 decades. Now he teaches at a university. A legit scientist says that there are aliens. They have reached out to Israel and the United States, and they just don't feel like it's really time yet for them to approach Earthlings. And this apparently happened like a couple years ago. Donald Trump knows about it, and he wanted to tell everybody about it, but the aliens were like, no, wait, it's too soon. And Trump was like, okay,
no,
I'll stay quiet.
No, not buying it. No.
This is my favorite story of the week. I didn't even get to write about this because my editor was like, no, we are not writing about this. I was like, this is going to be a thing. You mark my words.
No.
And sure enough, and then I spent the whole night talking about the Galactic Federation, which is apparently a real thing. It's not just Star Trek. And so the Galactic Federation is out there watching the world and thinks that we are basically the Florida of the universe.
Now that I believe. Now that I absolutely, I am more convinced about that. But here's the problem. And you had me up until Donald Trump knows.
Yeah.
Because there's no way in hell Donald Trump knows something and isn't going to blurt it out. It goes in ears, out mouth, no filter, no thought. So you lost me there. You had me. I was on the hook because I want to believe there are aliens, and I want to believe that they're cute and green and all of those things. Until you said that Trump knows.
Yeah, there's no way that guy could keep quiet on something like that. I mean, he even promised Lou Dobbs. What was that show that they did that Lou Dobbs asked if you're going to release all of the information about the UFOs, and Trump was like, yeah, totally. And then he hasn't.
Because there isn't any. Or maybe it's above his pay grade.
That's entirely possible. It could be part of the Galactic Federation, and they have like some powerful laser beam that just fried his brain so he doesn't remember any of it.
Or better yet, maybe Melania is an alien, and we just didn't know it. And
well, she was an illegal alien for a while.
Well, there was that. But now she's worried about her legacy.
Terrible.
She's now, evidently, there's a book coming out at some point going to talk about her legacy. It's not going to be a memoir. from what they said. It's just going to be a book about her time in the White House. And I'm going, is that the time where she wore the coat saying, I don't care? Or the time where she railed on about how much she hates Christmas? What part of that legacy is going to be the focus of the book?
That's my question. Like, what exactly has Melania done? She had a Be Best campaign that was not the best, and clearly failed to stabilize the United States as a civil society, because people are still outside of elected officials' houses with guns and air horns and screaming and scaring everybody's children. So clearly the Be Best isn't working, and it sure as hell didn't work on her husband. But, you know, this is my favorite thing about this whole thing is that she, honest to God, thought that there were taxpayer dollars available for her after her husband left office. She was not elected. She didn't hold any elected position, but somehow there's all of this money that would be available for her to go shopping on, to get her nose done. Like, I don't understand.
Well, you know, if she sues, if she divorces, she could sue for half of whatever they give them. I think they get their salary still after presidency, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
she could sue for half of that.
And if I was her, I would do it quickly, because this dude's going to have a lot of lawsuits after he gets out of office, and he may not have any money. And, you know, his stuff might get garnished if it turns out he owes millions and millions of tax, back taxes. So Melania better get it together. If she's going to leave him, she better do it fast.
Yeah, and she better get what she can while she can, because I'd hate to see, as you said, him go completely belly up. Be like kind of the Trading Places moment where the two rich guys end up, living in a gutter somewhere. Having her, trying to raise Barron with saying you want fries with that. Boy, I'd really hate to see that.
She'd probably just end up moving to Slovenia and, living there again. Because then she can be kind of an amusement park where people can come and hold court or whatever. But I love the idea that Trump, could just go belly up, and then maybe he ends up living with Jared and Ivanka, and, they have to change his diapers when he's old. And
Wow.
Yeah.
So does he go to Russia to seek asylum, as the Russian 60 Minutes has thrown out there that Dear Donald or Comrade Trump is going to come to Russia to seek asylum? Man,
wouldn't that be crazy?
And
that would just be a huge admission of guilt,
Yeah.
I think, if he did something like that. But, I mean, if they're offering it, I wouldn't be surprised.
This is one of those moments where I tweeted out today, if Trump goes to jail, does he get to keep his Secret Service detail? Do they get to follow him around in jail? And is his Secret Service detail there to make sure that he doesn't seek asylum in Russia?
I wonder that, because that Secret Service detail will not leave his side, for the rest of his presidency, for the rest of his life, post-presidency. So if he goes to Russia, do they follow? Do we pay for that? In the prison thing, they'll put him in solitary confinement, basically like what they did with Paul Manafort, and his own little area where he'll be protected from other people, I guess. But geez, I never thought about if he flees, us paying for it.
See the kind of weird world we're in? We've got one side of the equation saying we're going to tear down democracy and our guy won and we don't care about what the voters think. And on the other side, you got people going, well, when he goes to prison, because I said if it happens, because there's a possibility that it could happen. I seriously doubt it will. Right. But everybody was correcting me. No, Rick, you're wrong. It's when. And I'm going, I don't think that's going to happen. But okay, you go there. I'm just asking the question. Do we have to pay for his Secret Service detail if he goes to jail? Hope not.
Does he still get his salary? I assume he would still get his salary if he.
I would assume he would too. That'll buy a lot of cigarettes. That'll keep.
Yeah. Does it go in the card? Because you have to have that payment card.
Yeah.
It's not just cash.
No.
Or does half of that just go to Melania? And that's how she basically lives out the rest of her life with living off of his money.
Yeah, there's
that
no
he's
way.
getting from.
There's no way she could only live off of $200,000 a year.
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy, crazy. So what do you think about this? 17 states have decided that, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, none of those people matter. None of their votes matter. Throw them all out. We know Texas knows better, and the other 16 that have joined along, they know better. What do you think of that mess?
So one of the things that I was curious about is why Arizona was not named in that suit. Why are they not suing Arizona, even though it was a red state that went blue, and they had all these other Arizona lawsuits? Rudy Giuliani went there. He gave everybody COVID. They had to shut down the legislature. So why isn't Arizona included in this?
Does Arizona have a Republican legislature?
Yeah.
I didn't think they did. I thought one of their I thought one of the chambers was one way or the other.
Is it the Senate or the House? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But the governor, obviously, Doug Ducey, is in his own little world, and the other federal Republicans that are in the delegation for Arizona signed off on that 106, Congress member letter that they say that they're supporting the lawsuit, the Texas lawsuit. So it's a weird thing to me that they take issue with Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, but somehow Arizona gets a pass. And the idea behind it, their lawsuit basically is saying, well, you had all of these officials that changed things in the elections and how elections are conducted because of the COVID stuff. Well, if that is the case, then why aren't you suing all of the states that did that? Because there's more than just those. There are a whole bunch of red states that changed things around because of the COVID stuff.
Right.
There are a whole bunch of states. Texas was one of them. They put those drop-off boxes for people to mail, to drop their ballots in. So that was a big change for Texas. So I really don't understand, how this is going to work. Part of me really wants the Supreme Court to take up the case and just have Roberts wagging his finger the whole time, forcing them to answer hard questions about this and acknowledge that this is a completely BS case. And it's a total joke. And I think that would be fun to see Ted Cruz try and defend that.
And I would like to see Rudy Giuliani be second chair.
Exactly. If he has managed to make it through the COVID by then.
No, I mean, this is one of those weird things where, they've made all of these allegations. And look, if they're true, if you can prove them, then we've got a serious problem. If Joe Biden during the COVID learned coding in the basement and was able to reprogram all of these Dominion machines, and they were able to rig the entire election so that Joe Biden would only win and not give himself a Senate and not pick up extra House seats and extra state legislatures or extra governor's mansions, which, again, when you start thinking about it, if they're going to cheat, why not cheat? Why not go the rest of the way and actually be able to accomplish something? This is where the whole thing breaks down for me. If they really were, if there was this great grand conspiracy, why not go the rest of the way?
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to say that this entire election was totally fraudulent, then I guess we need to have a totally different election, and we'll have to see whether all those new House members still make it. We don't know. I'm curious to see how the state of Georgia would vote now that we know a whole bunch more about David Perdue's sketchy investments. There are a lot of things that we know now that we didn't know during the election. One of the main things that I think people hopefully now are starting to understand is that electronic voting machines are not connected to the internet. They, you basically download the results and then plug it into the other, the tabulators. So Joe Biden would have had to have learned, all of this coding in his basement and then gone to each individual voting machine to recode every single one.
Yeah, and what they did is that's where the USB sticks from Philadelphia come in.
And clearly, that's why we weren't seeing so much of Biden. They kept saying he was stuck in his basement. Well, really, obviously, he was going state to state to state, just like, recoding every voting machine. I guess.
And look, if he did it and got away with it and ended up giving himself 7 million more votes, wow, good on him, man. That is the guy I want running the country. If he can pull this off, if he can pull off this kind of a grand conspiracy and only get himself elected and the hell with the rest of the party and have nobody know he did it, and that's the guy. You want that kind of ingenuity in the White House. You want that kind of leadership quality.
That's a self-starter right there.
That is a self-starter. And speaking of self-starters, what's this thing with Congressman Eric Swalwell?
So Eric Swalwell met this girl 8 years ago who may or may not have been a Chinese spy. And apparently went out with her for a little bit. And 6 years ago, the FBI came to him and said, hey, this girl that you know, we think she might be a Chinese spy. And he said, holy crap, I'll never see her again. I'm never going to talk to her again. What can I do? Here's all the information I have on her. How do I do to, make this right and fix this and all of the things. And she basically then disappeared and moved back to China suddenly. And it's interesting because if you look at what happened with the Trump campaign in 2016, the FBI came to the Trump campaign and to the Clinton campaign and said, hey, look, we have some credible intelligence telling us that the Russian government wants to infiltrate your campaign. So we're asking, keep your eye out. If somebody reaches out to you that has connections with Russia, if something sketchy is going on that is involving Russia, just give us a heads up. Let us know. They had Carter Page. They had Mike Flynn. They had the sketchy meeting with the Russian lawyer. They had all of these things. And the FBI is saying, hey, this is maybe a problem.
Right.
You maybe should think about not meeting with a whole bunch of Russian people or, let us know what's going on with all of this stuff.
Or not having all these people who have Russian contacts. And, the one guy who was actually the Russian PR guy, Michael Caputo, or don't forget Maria Butina, who, is kind of like this Chinese spy woman. She was making the rounds with the NRA people and a lot of politicians. So same thing. Yeah.
Tons of politicians. And it's exactly the same thing. But in those instances where the FBI came to them and said, hey, this might be a thing, they not only ignored it, they went the whole other direction. And so you kind of see the difference between the way that Swalwell behaved, where he was like, oh my God, I'll never see her again. What do I do to help the FBI? Carter Page, Michael Caputo, Maria Butini's buddies, they were all just like, they doubled down on it. So when people are just like, oh, this Eric Swalwell, he's going to have to resign. It's like, well, Trump didn't have to.
Right.
So
that's simple,
that's
huh?
What I think.
But what's interesting? What's interesting is out of this story then comes the reality that this is how spy agencies work. They send you really attractive women, and you get, I'm not going to say sucked into it, but you get kind of drawn into it. And I think back to, I didn't mean it that way.
I know you did.
If that's where you're going. But, I think about, I had a conversation with a guy named John Perkins. He wrote the book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I've had him on the show a couple of times, interesting guy. He told the story of how the CIA turned him into what he had become, which was a bagman for the CIA. And he said, look, a really attractive woman found me in college, wined me, dined me, everything you could imagine me. And I was literally at her behest, and they could have had me do anything. And this is what they do. And the Chinese do it too.
Yeah, this is the thing that a lot of the former FBI agents were online that I follow on Twitter. They were really talking about this thing. This is not, Eric Swalwell is not the only one. He's not the first one. He will definitely not be the last one. There have obviously been more since in the last 8 years that's been a thing for. So, this is something that happens, and it's something that we should all kind of be aware of for anybody that's working in government, whether they're a low-level, legislative assistant in Dianne Feinstein's office or whatever. Like, really, if somebody all of a sudden thinks that you are the bomb.com and they want to, like, rock your world and, they've got maybe some sketchy ties to Russia or they've spent the majority of their lives in China, like, maybe ask if that's really honest. Like, is that really a thing? Especially if you're a super old, funny-looking bald dude, like, what's his name in the Dakotas, Maria Butina's boyfriend. Look at her and look at him, and you gotta ask, really? You didn't see this?
Yeah.
Like, you didn't know? Come on, dude.
Treason's really, really seductive. Oh, well. But good times. So I guess the last question then, is this the end of Swalwell? Does he get by this? What do you see?
He'll be fine. That district loves him. I think if they even if they tried to go after him and say that he needed to be pulled off of the Intelligence Committee, I think he could be like, well, this is, the government. Donald Trump knew about this for 4 years and did nothing. Yeah. So obviously it's not that big of a deal.
Good stuff. Sarah, I appreciate the time. Always great talking with you.
Thank you. Happy Hanukkah.
You as well, our good friend Sarah Burris. Raw Story. Make sure you check out her work. Quick break. Right back.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
The Arctic really has achieved a new normal.
Scientists warn of Arctic's dramatic transformation. Trump EPA makes it even harder to enact new pollution rules. Plus, bad news for big oil. New York State's giant pension fund is divesting from fossil fuels.
All of that good, bad news and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
People talk about like the Green New Deal, like AOC is going to personally come in your house and steal your Christmas presents and then replace it with a lump of coal and then come back and replace the lump of coal with a solar panel.
Oh, like she's not. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, it's been a while, actually, happily, since we've had exploding plants, but we got one again now?
Yes, unfortunately, we do have another chemical plant explosion, this time in Bell, West Virginia. The explosion on Tuesday night at a DuPont Chemours chlorine plant killed one worker and injured 2 others. Residents within a 2-mile radius of the plant were ordered to shelter in place from the toxic fumes until the fire was out. The cause is still under investigation. Meanwhile, the Trump Environmental Protection Agency this week finalized a sweeping new rule that undermines the ability of future administrations to issue new curbs on pollution of any kind. The new rule restricts the EPA to only considering costs to industry from a new rule and prohibits the agency from including public health co-benefits and cost savings gained from reducing toxic pollution, effectively removing the benefit part from its cost-benefit analysis. It makes it difficult to justify any new regulation if you don't count the costs in American lives and health.
And is this going to be one of those rules that they have made it difficult for Joe Biden to turn around when he comes in?
Well, the incoming Biden administration can reverse the rule once in office, but that process could take years. It's one of many Trump administration rule changes that are intended to handcuff future EPAs from protecting public health.
And another one of those rules that if the Democrats can take the Senate, they'd be able to turn around with majorities in both the House and the Senate.
Right. If Democrats control both houses, they would be able to invoke the Congressional Review Act, which allows Congress to strike down such last-minute regulations.
Hey, you folks in Georgia paying attention? Don't answer that. I suspect you are. You probably can't avoid it at this point.
Another disastrous year for the Arctic. NOAA released its annual Arctic report card this week, warning that persistent and accelerating warming in the region is affecting Arctic ecosystems and the entire global climate system. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet. This year, it saw temperatures spiking to 100 degrees Fahrenheit north of the Arctic Circle.
Wow.
Sea ice extent was the second lowest ever observed in the satellite era. Plus, dangerously low snow cover led to record severe wildfires and accelerated thawing of permafrost. Both, in turn, released even more climate-warming greenhouse gases in a self-reinforcing feedback loop that scientists predicted decades ago.
That scientists warned about decades ago.
Arctic scientist Rick Toman, in a virtual press conference, warned that the region is rapidly shifting.
The 2020 report card describes an Arctic region that continues along a path that is warmer, less frozen, and biologically changed in ways that were scarcely imaginable even a generation ago. Nearly everything in the Arctic, from ice and snow to human activity, is changing so quickly that there's really no reason to think that in 30 years, much of anything will be as it is today.
And they warn that has global consequences. Arctic warming has cascading effects around the planet, raising sea levels, changing ocean circulation, and new research suggests playing a role in altering global weather patterns and intensifying extreme weather events. Finally, there is some good news. New York State's pension fund, one of the world's largest investment funds, this week committed to divesting from fossil fuels. The state controller announced the fund will ditch most of its fossil fuel investments within 5 years, and by 2040 will divest from companies that haven't eliminated their greenhouse gas emissions, calling them a risk to the fund's long-term value. The fund will use its investment clout to pressure companies to align their operations with climate action. Energy analysts say the move could accelerate a broader shift in global markets away from oil and gas companies.
This is big news. I know it's very good news for a lot of environmental groups who have been pushing for this for years. This is one of the largest, if not the largest, such pension funds in the world to take this action, as I understand.
Yep, and it frees up billions of dollars for investment in renewable energy and innovative carbon-neutral industries.
Now, there's an idea. For much more on that story, all of the stories, and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Rudy Giuliani, I guess, is out of the hospital. And the story that went with it is just insane to me. Understand, we're in the middle of a raging pandemic. More than 3,000 people died today. And Rudy Giuliani said that he was treated like a celebrity. You know, he got the Resdemivir, he got the, whatever the cocktail is that Trump was touting as, made him feel 10 years younger. Rudy agrees, makes him feel 10 years younger. So a guy who has been out there, leading the charge as a super spreader is now kind of rubbing it in everyone's face that he's getting something the rest of us, if we don't absolutely do everything right, we're never going to get. I mean, there's something seriously wrong with this equation. And here to share some thoughts on where we are and how bad things really are with this virus, I've asked our good friend, Dr. Kelly Senholtz, to come back and share some thoughts with us. Dr. Senholtz, thanks for taking time for us.
Hello, it's so good to be with you today.
So am I right to be outraged by the fact that this guy who basically, in my view, is a super spreader, got the virus, ended up going to the hospital and getting in, and then getting celebrity treatment and drugs that I probably can't get if I end up coming down with it? I mean, do I have right to be angry about this, do you think?
Furious, jumping up and down, red-faced, throwing your arms up in the air. The medication that we're referring to is the Regeneron medication. What this does, and I talk about it like it's like a sponge. It kind of sucks up the virus, and you get well really quickly. The problem with it is they developed the medication. There's only, less than 100,000 doses out there, if what I last knew. Giuliani's receiving that medication appears to be a direct violation of the guidelines of the emergency use authorization. So what happened is they made this medication. They knew it was going to be scarce. And what happened is the study showed it really worked best for people that were not in the hospital but were at high risk for progression of disease. So if you're already in the hospital, you should not be getting this medication. And both Trump and Giuliani, and I think Christie too, got it after they were hospitalized. So in all of those cases, it was a violation of their own FDA's emergency use authorization.
Yeah, but I look at this, Kelly, and this is a guy who has acted recklessly at the minimum. This is a guy who has put himself and others at risk. He's accused healthcare professionals of being these alarmists and these elitists, and yet when he gets it because of his reckless behavior, where does he run to get celebrity treatment? He runs to the alarmists and elitists who then take care of him. I don't even know where to go with that.
It is the worst possible behavior for a human being that you could imagine. The stunning thing that I keep hearing from everyone is, like, how can the followers of Trump think any of this is okay? Like, what happened to them? Their minds just aren't even... If we ever had a moral society or a society that worked because people understood how to be a decent human being, they're tearing it down with their fingernails, This was like the Berlin Wall. They're just tearing at it, and every single thing that's good and decent about our country, they're tearing down and creating a horrible... it pits people against each other. If you go back to each of these things, it's about pitting people against each other. Power can be grabbed when people are fighting with each other. And the whole purpose of every one of these things is to get people fighting. So now we're understandably really mad that these celebrities get the Regeneron, and people that are really at risk of dying can't get it because it's been given to those people. I'm hopeful they'll be, working hard to manufacture as much as possible, which you would think they'd be motivated to do financially. They want, this is a short window of time. They need to make as much as possible, and so they can make as much money on their project as possible. So it makes sense they would want to do that. But, watching these guys flippantly endanger people. Didn't he infect like 100 people or something? He's like the Johnny Appleseed of COVID. He went to Michigan, and there's 30 or 40 legislators or aides that are sick there. Everywhere he went, he got people sick.
Well, here in Pennsylvania, the day before Thanksgiving, they had their super spreader tantrum fit tour come into Gettysburg, and the guy who led it, Senator Doug Mastriano, right down the road from us, he ended up getting it, and they found out he got it that night, the night of the event. And then the guy turns around and goes, "Well, I got it when the makeup woman put her brushes on my face." I'm going,
oh, wow.
You're a moron. You're a moron.
The sad part about this, too, is that, we had a study out today that said healthcare workers have a 7-fold increased risk of serious disease when they get COVID. And I believe more and more as I read studies and look at what's happening, it appears to me that viral load is going to be a really key factor in this. If you walk through a grocery store and you sniff in just a little bit of virus and you end up getting sick, you're probably not going to be as sick as someone who's looking down the throats of people with COVID all afternoon.
Right.
So the people that are risking their lives, that are putting their entire life on hold to take care of these non-mask wearers when they get ill, are the ones that are getting really, really sick. And I think they should get the Regeneron.
No, I agree with you. And they're obviously the ones who should be vaccinated first, along with the people who are living in nursing facilities. Like a relative of mine who just recently passed because of the COVID, was living in a nursing facility, and he passed away. And the thing is, he was a huge Trump supporter. And it's a horrible thing. But in looking at this, I'll tell you, I look at these people who really are heroes. These healthcare workers who really selflessly do this work. And there was a thread on Twitter a couple of days ago that I retweeted out of, this Jewish doctor telling the story that, in comes this guy with Nazi tattoos and swastikas all over his body, who was, a little older guy who was, who had the virus and was really struggling, and he was begging people, to save him. He wants to live and all this stuff. And there's a Jewish doctor, an African-American nurse, an Asian respiratory therapist, all of the people this guy, by his tattoos, are saying that he hates, who are there to take care of this guy and do the best that they can to save his life while risking their own. I got to tell you, I don't know that I can do that.
I like when you're talking about that, I'm like, yes, that's what we do. We do not just with that, but, with every kind of self-inflicted injury and illness, we understand that these are human beings and they make mistakes and they have a chance to grow and learn. And our job is to heal them. That's our job. We do our best to heal their heart and their body and their soul in any way we can. And it's just a joy to be able to do that, to be honest with you. It's been a privilege to be able to do that. But right now, it's kind of testing everybody's patience.
Yeah.
Did you know that there's a select subcommittee on the coronavirus crisis in the House? A select subcommittee is a special committee that nobody can mess with them. They get to do their work free of interference.
Right.
And they just found out that the Trump administration is destroying evidence that they interfered with the response to COVID. Remember, we've been talking about all along about how everything he does increases the infection. He hasn't even accidentally done something that would make it better. Everything he does makes it worse. And now Representative Clyburn said that he has found serious concern that there are deliberate efforts by the Trump administration to conceal and destroy evidence that his senior appointees interfered with the official response to coronavirus.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. Early on, what we heard from the beginning, that Kushner had said it wasn't a problem because it was only happening in those blue states. I truly believe it was, you didn't vote for me, the hell, screw you. I'll let you die.
Yeah. I think there's a difference, though, in being indifferent and in actively preventing help.
Well, didn't they literally steal PPE from what was it, Maryland, or was it Massachusetts? Didn't they come in and it was somebody that they literally stole it from?
I'm glad you brought up the PPE because did I bring up in Malaysia the glove factory that got all infected with COVID?
No.
And they're the main glove factory in the whole world. So somehow, in the way the world economy works, we ended up with all the gloves coming from a single factory in Malaysia.
Right.
And unfortunately, that factory has been attacked. It's been at least a couple of weeks. They've been having a terrible COVID outbreak. 20,000 employees are down with COVID. and they are basically out of business. They're not making gloves, and I think there's something like we're a week out from being out of gloves. Out of gloves.
Yeah, well, this is one of those moments.
I'm like, oh my God.
Right. No, this is one of those things that I've been screaming about for years, because we all learned economics. We all learned the rice and beans theory, that one country could make all the rice and one country could make all the beans because they specialize this, and we can all have more. And you go, well, what happens when they can no longer make rice or beans? We have no more rice or beans. Or what happens if they go, no, we need our rice and we need our beans. No one gets rice or beans. This is what's happening. We have one country, one place that makes gloves. They shut down. Nobody gets gloves. You got one place that makes masks. They shut down or say, no, we need to hoard our masks. There are no masks. Why are we surprised by this?
Yeah, well, because we've had a year to get ready. We've had a year for anybody, to check out where the masks and gloves and gowns are coming from, and to cause us to have, overlapping supply chains. The fact that we're a year out and we're still having PPE issues is talking about the healthcare workers that are putting their lives on the line. Other people let them down. They're depending on that equipment, and other people let them down. I did think that we may have to put a call out to everybody in the United States that have boxes of gloves sitting underneath their, kitchen sink or whatever, to turn them in and let people, let the healthcare workers use them. That is the next thing I see happening.
Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You just go.
Yeah.
That's one of those moments where you just go, I don't even know where to go with that, because it's so outrageous. And it leads me back to what my positions have always been of, we need to have domestic production for domestic consumption. We should have an industry in this country that makes those things specifically for these reasons. And yes, if we have to pay a penny more for them to make sure that industry stays in business, then that's what we do. It's crazy to me that we're in this moment, but I think it does highlight, how the titans of industry have shaped the global economy in a way that has left us vulnerable.
It's left us vulnerable, and because when you have, this goes back to diversity. Diversity is always good. Diversity of experience, diversity of thought. If you have a bunch of people in a room that all went to the same Harvard, and they all have the same professors, and they all come from the same way of thinking, then you're not going to get as good of a result. Somebody in the room is not going to stand up and say, hey, what about the gloves? And that's why diversity is good. We're seeing it in full action. When you have a bunch of people that are all the same, you're not going to get good results. That's exactly what's happening. So somebody could have said, it's great, fine, let Malaysia make most of the gloves, but we need to have factories in Vietnam and United States and wherever for overlap, so that we have a supply if something happens.
Scary stuff.
And it wasn't done.
Last question I've got for you. You see Virginia now imposing nightly curfews. They're now limiting gatherings to 10 people, tightening their mask rules here in Pennsylvania. They're tightening down things again. I guess we're going to be closing restaurants and bars down for 3 weeks. This going to help us over the next couple of weeks? Does this, or is it too far out of control at this point already, do you think?
Do you remember back in February, March, something like that, Dr. Fauci said, if we don't get a grip on this in the summer, when the fall comes, it's going to get out of control.
Right.
And the words out of control have a meaning, and the meaning is what we're having happen right now.
Right. I've been regurgitating that all summer long.
Oh, yeah. Well, right now we have in Wisconsin, in Green Bay, Wisconsin, there's a chiropractor that's begging people to carry mace around, and if someone makes them wear a mask, he said you should mace them in the face. So we're not only fighting the virus, but we're fighting stupidity, we're fighting hate, racism, bigotry, all of that is like a huge mountain we're having to push against. I got to tell you, I'm pretty proud of the fact that we're doing it. I mean, obviously, it's not been easy, and not everybody's going to make it through. But, you know, it does seem like the good people understand what needs to be done, that people need to stay home. They need to take care of their families. They need to be careful and wear masks. Like, the good people do understand what needs to be done. And there's all this craziness going on. And the good people are just like, nope, wearing my mask, doing my thing, staying home, you know, sewing, whatever they're doing for enjoyment, reading books, whatever. Good people are doing the right thing. And that is very, very heartening.
Yeah.
A lot of people that are like the chiropractor in Green Bay are going to die. They will get COVID and they will die. And there's nothing we've tried to save them, and they won't save themselves.
Yeah, you can't save stupid. And there's part of me that goes, this is how we thin the herd, and hopefully you didn't reproduce. And I know that's cold and that's callous, but at some point you've got to let the dim go. But Dr. Sennholz, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. Stay safe.
You have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thanks so much, our good friend Dr. Kelly Sennholz. Look, at the end of the day, if someone sprays me in the face with mace, there's a beating coming. Can you believe that? How insane. Quick break, right back. Stick around.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1855. That was the day that Haymarket martyr August Spies was born. He immigrated to America from Germany in 1872 and became involved in the Chicago labor movement while working as an upholsterer. The Panic of 1873 and the Great Strikes of 1877 radicalized Spies. He soon joined the Socialist Labor Party, but left over the issue of electoral politics. He and others favored revolutionary action instead, and threw their weight to the emerging anarcho-syndicalist movement. Spies and his comrade, Albert Parson, believed trade unions must work towards ending capitalism rather than simply fighting for economic gains. They soon became leaders of the International Working People's Association in Chicago. Spies became the editor of the radical German-language newspaper, Arbeiter Zeitung. The workers' newspaper decried the incredible wealth of a few amidst the immense poverty and suffering workers faced. It became a rallying point for the 8-hour day campaign. Spies and other anarchist leaders, who would soon be known as the Haymarket Martyrs, became involved in organizing the May Day strike in 1886. Spies gave the impassioned speech at the McCormick Reaper Works. He witnessed the Chicago police shoot down 2 workers as they confronted scabs at the gate and organized a protest rally in response. The rally took place at the Haymarket Square the next evening. When the fateful bomb was thrown, Spies and his comrades were immediately arrested. They were tried and convicted for their political views. There was no evidence linking any of them to any crime. As he walked to the gallows, Spies shouted, "The day will come when our silence will be more powerful than the voices you are throttling today." Welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being here. Wow, what a day. Please be safe. Please don't do dumb things. Don't be one of the stupid people. And most certainly do not, under any circumstances, spray somebody in the face, especially me with mace, because I will not be happy about it. This is crazy, and we live in crazy times. Be sane, be safe, and be good to each other. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. See you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.